In these bar stools, we're going to be weaving a fiber rush seat. Now, bar stools are pretty similar to chairs, except a bar stool has the same diameter from front to back. Most chairs are a little wider in the front than they are in the back, and that requires a little different method. But overall, it's pretty much the same. But we're just going to concentrate on the bar stools in this video. There's a few things that you're going to need. Here I've laid out some of the tools that will be useful in weaving the seat. This is a tool I made up myself. It just helps to keep the weave strands tight and in line. This is a little hand clamp. You're going to need a flathead screwdriver. And in this case I've got a pair of scissors, but you can use a pair of snips or anything that you can cut your fiber rush with. In this case I'm going to be using a 5/32 fiber rush. You will also need either some tacks and a tack hammer. In this case I have an electric staple gun. You can also use a hand staple gun. And you may even be able to just tape your fiber rush to the rung. That's what we're going to be using the staple gun for, is to connect our first strand of fiber rush to the rung. You will also need a bucket of water, which I have down here on the floor. So let's get started. So I like to begin by getting my fiber rush wet in the water. Some people say this is optional. I prefer to get it wet. I think it makes it a little softer, makes it a little easy to stretch it and get it nice and tight. You don't want to get it too wet though. If you get it too wet, it tends to break on you. All this fiber rush is a twisted cardboard. So you can understand there why we don't want to get it too wet. I've also wrapped this up in little separate bundles in here just to keep it from becoming a big tangled mess. But to start, I like to start on the left hand rung. I go about midway back, put a few staples in it. And the important part is your weaving pattern. The first strand should come over than the top rung. So we go underneath it. As such. And then we will basically just continue that. We'll go to the next rung here, keeping it on top and wrapping it under. Cross to the next, and back to the front, over to the rear, and we will just follow this same pattern throughout the whole weaving process. I like to go about, probably about 5 times. And then I'll go ahead and I'll tighten this all up. Now when you're tightening up all your strands, you want to pull them snug. But you don't want to pull them so snug that you break them, of course. And it's also important that you don't overlap these. When you're weaving around here, it's easy to do. It's easy to come over like this and overlap this on top of some that have already been done. So you want to be mindful of that, and you can feel with your fingers as you wrap this around if you're doing that. If you think 5 strands is a little too difficult to keep track of when you're first starting out, you can go through and you can just do 2 or 3, whatever works for you. There's no rule. It says you can do 1 at a time until you get used to it. It'll take you probably about a half a dozen seats before you probably start to really feel comfortable with the process. When you come to a place and you want to stop, you can wrap it around. And that's where this clamp comes in handy. You can just clamp it on there and pinch that, and that'll hold that for you. I usually like to stop with a strand going over the top at some point. And this is a good place to straighten out your weaving strands. Take this here that I've made up, and you should also have a wooden mallet. I should have mentioned that. Now as you weave around, these will want to pull away from each other. They're going to want to keep sliding more towards the center of the stool. So the flat-headed screwdriver is good to get in there and just tap these back into place. It's good to do this frequently, because if you wait too long and they get too far out, tapping them back is going to loosen your weave. You can also keep them level by tapping down ones that get a little high. And I'm just going to go around and I'm going to do that on each 4 corner. And I'll also tip the stool upside down and do the same on the underneath. I have woven around here another 5 times, which gives us a total of 10 times that we've been around. At this point I need to take my straightener and knock these back into alignment. And I can't really do this one with the clamp there, so I'm just going to pull this around and move the clamp. Now I can take my screwdriver and go back and straighten all these strands. Some of them won't need it, some of them are okay. Usually the underneath is the worst. Okay, now we're just going to keep going like that. One other thing I like to do, when I get at least to this point, sometimes I wait till I'm a little farther along. So I'll just take and tap these down. It kind of, at this point, looks like it's going to shape a dish. So I'm going to go through and do a few strands off camera, and once I get this filled in a little bit, I'll talk to you again. Now I've been around here a total of 19 times at this point, and I've come to the end of my spool of rush. So what I need to do now is I need to just tie the new piece right onto this one, but I want to make sure that my knot falls on the underneath of my weave. So I just do the same thing that I did with the first batch, just soak it a little bit in water. Remember, you don't want it too wet. I'm going to cut this off so it's right about in the middle. Give myself a little extra. I like to use a square knot, but I suppose just a granny knot would work alright. And we just keep on with this pattern. I'm going to go a little bit farther. And when I get in here a little farther, there's another step that I will demonstrate. Now once we've reached this point, we want to fill these cavities and kind of fill this out a little. What I've done is I've gone and cut some cardboard shapes, and it'll just get tucked in here. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to work my way around, and we'll fill all of this in with this cardboard. I'll trim this back, just about like that, on each one.